So, Rabbi Yosef Karo moved from Portugal to Egypt, and from Egypt to Edirne, Adrianopolis. In the Adrianopolis, he became more independent as a judge, as a posek halacha. And at a certain point, there was an interesting debate that things like that happen today also. There was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yom Tov Cohen who was appointed the rabbi of the Catalan synagogue in Edirne. There was a specific synagogue for the people from Catalonia, which include Barcelona and Girona, and he was appointed as a rabbi. And when he was appointed as a rabbi, he accepted under oath to not teach in the synagogue, and not to be a rabbi in the synagogue, meaning it's sort of like a contract that will kick in only later, and the time for the contract to begin was a year after the current rabbi passes away. So they took into account that if the rabbi was very old, that he will pass after he passes away. This will be the next in line, but he needs a year in between. After he made this contract, this oath, several weeks later, the older rabbi passed away. So the new rabbi said, I want to start serving now. He said it makes sense that maybe originally when they made the contract, they didn't want to offend the current rabbi, but now he says this is gone. So several rabbis were there were chosen to decide what to do. Among them, on one side were Rabbi Aaron Trani and the other one Rabbi Yosef Karo, and they disagreed on that. They went into a serious debate, and it doesn't matter what eventually happened with the appointment, but because Rabbi Yosef Karo had this very bitter debate with Rabbi Aaron Trani, later on, when the nephew of Rabbi Aaron Trani, the Mabit that I mentioned before, Rabbi Moshe ben Yosef Trani, who was in Tzefat, lived in proximity to Rabbi Yosef Karo, there was a debate between them. And it affects, when you have mahaloka between rabbis, even if it's L'Shem Shamayim, eventually it could affect the, influence the way the halacha would be ruled. And Rabbi Yosef Karo already then showed his independence. He wrote back to Rabbi Israel ben Eliyahu Mizrahi, was in Constantinople. He wrote this: במה שכתבנו לא ראינו להעתיק כל ראיות בקיאות ממקומות הגמרא הרומזים לעניין הנזכר. He says, I wrote my teshuvah, but I didn't see the need to copy all the text, or to quote here all the text from the Talmud and other books that deal with this matter. Why? כי אין כוונתנו להראות ניירות מלאים כמות. My point is not to aggregate great quantity of material, רק דברים כולם איכות, but rather quality, מעוררים לב החכם הנלבב לעיין ולהוסיף לקח, which would prompt the scholar to learn more. And this is important that he makes this comment, because if you look at the response to literature from that period, the 1500s, there are two trends, and it depends on. And it seems like Rabbi Yosef Karo was of the school that wanted to be more concise, but you see the shuvot at the time that one topic, one question will take 30-40 pages. People are very concise in later on, like Rabbi Yosef Mesash. His typical teshuvah would be 2-3 pages, and Rabbi Yosef is somewhere in between. But in the 1600s, especially in the Balkans, that area, rabbis used to write in great length, more than dozens of pages on one issue. And Rabbi Yosef Karo says that's not the point. Like, get to the point. I just need to bring the things that I have the quality and analysis. In any case, that is in Edirne is where Rabbi Yosef Karo started writing his monumental work, the Bet Yosef. Bet Yosef, as we mentioned, is the commentary on the Arba'at Turim of Rabbi Yaakov ben Arosh, and he first wrote the commentary to show all the sources of the Turim, where it comes from, and he added also all the new halachic material that was added from the time of Rabbi Yaakov Ba'al Turim to his time, Basically, he summed up all the halachic literature from the Mishnah till his time, about 1500 years, and in a very detailed and logical manner. That took him over 30 years. That was his major work. After he did the Bet Yosef, it took him less time to write the shulchan-aruch, because now he had everything ready for that.
Look at the Bet Yosef. The Bet Yosef was never published on its own, right? In other words, it's only incorporated into the shulchan-aruch. But was it ever?
No, the Bet Yosef, I think.
So can you get a book named Bet Yosef now?
Oh no, not now. No,
right?
No. I have to look into that.
Yeah.
So this is what he says. When he finished the Bet Yosef, he says, "אברך אדוני אשר יעצני ועד כה ברכני לאחר לגמור הספר המפואר הזה באו 4 טורים אשר כרטיב בית יוסף." He says that he thanks God that gave him the merit. This is really a huge achievement. Yes, right, from Tehillim Tet Zayin. This is the pasuk. It says Hashem gave me the strength and the possibility to start and finish the work. This is a great achievement. אשר כרטיב בית יוסף. He said, התחלתיו באנדרינופולי שנת רפ"ו. I started in Edirne in 1522, והשלמתיו בעיר צפת אשר בגליל העליון תיבנה ותיכונן במהרה בימינו, and I completed it in Tzefat, in the upper Galil, the Galilee. May it will be established במהרה בימינו, יום י"א לאלול שנת הבוקר אור. So it was on the 11th of Elul, shortly before Rosh Hashanah of 1554 that he finished the Sefer. So it must have been a great excitement for him. It says, ונתעסקתי עוד בהגעתו ומהדורת עניינה עד שנת שי"ד. So another 7 years he reviewed the book, and as while he was writing another book. So this is the place where Rabbi Yosef Karo started writing the commentary on shulchan-aruch, and I said there were great rabbis there in Edirne, which he worked with. He worked with some of them. It was in debate and disagreement with others. And the other place that influenced Rabbi Yosef Karo very, very seriously is Salonika, and that is Salonika. Is the new center where not only the halacha literature flourished, but also Kabbalah. And remember that when we spoke about the development of halachic literature, I mentioned that there, up to a certain point, there was a clear division between Kabbalah and halacha. The world of Kabbalah, the Kabbalists, the mystics, lived in their own world, and whatever they did was... and in many cases, they did not look at the teachings of Kabbalah as something that affects their daily practice of halacha. It was mostly prayers, what they called kavanot, the intention of tefillah and what to have in mind when you say this tefillah or the other tefillah, but it didn't immediately affect the halacha. That was more prevalent in the book of the Zohar. So when the Zohar was first published in the third, or not published, really revealed, because even after it was revealed, it was not printed for 200 years. So people had copies, and even great rabbis and scholars of Kabbalah didn't have access to the full knowledge of the Zohar. The Zohar is where you start seeing Kabbalah influencing halakha, saying, for example, like we mentioned, 3 drops of water into the wine, Seudah Shalishit on Shabbat, that's important, not putting tefillin on Chol HaMoed, wearing tefillin Shel Yad while sitting, and Shel Rosh while sitting. All these things are influence of Kabbalah, but they were reserved for a very small group of Mekubalim who studied that. Rabbi Yosef Karo, his time is where those two worlds merge. That the great Kabbalists are also people who write and study halacha, and he's one of the key figures here, because his interest in Kabbalah and not interest. He was really deeply involved in Kabbalistic teachings to the extent of learning Kabbalistic traditions that other rabbis did not accept. What is called the ecstatic Kabbalah of Rabbi Avraham Abu Afia. There was a rabbi who, or practical Kabbalah, that some people say it's too dangerous to learn. He did that also. But it is not evident in the shulchan-aruch. When he's not writing a shulchan-aruch, when he writes a halakha, he doesn't say, according to the Kabbalah, you have to do this, according to the Kabbalah, you have to do that. It's interwoven in a very subtle way, but it definitely had an influence on his rulings, because part of his mystical way of life and understanding was to abstain from unnecessary pleasures. So his approach towards modesty, towards sexuality, towards eating or drinking, all these things were determined by his understanding of Kabbalah. So in Salonika, we'll go back to Salonika where this influence started. I mentioned that Salonika was became a center of Jewish life after Girush Sfarad. People flocked to Salonika, 20,000 Jews there. It was called Yerushalayim de Balkan, Jerusalem of the Balkans. They had has 4 great yeshivot that the Rashi Yeshivot were Rabbi Yosef Fassi, Rabbi Yaakov ben Haviv, and Rabbi Yosef Taitatzek. And in the 4th yeshiva belonged to the Italian Jews, headed by Rabbi Prahaya Kohen. It's interesting to look at their curriculum because we have documentation of that. Dikduk Safa Ivrit. They studied the Hebrew grammar, Shira Ufiyut, poetry and liturgy. The Ashkenazim don't have. They no, right? And that was, by the way, also in the Sephardic yeshivot. If you look at their curriculum, they didn't have the grammar. We know that for sure. That grammar, mathematics, the language of the place, whether it was Spanish or Latin or Greek, was taught, and Shira Piyut. That was always part of the curriculum. Be'urei Mikra bederech muskelet, the commentary of the Tanakh, bederech muskelet, in the way of logic and reason, meaning not midrashim, not interpretation that are not based on logic and and the text of the pasuk, theology and geometry. So this is a comprehensive curriculum that people studied. And Rabbi Yosef Karo came to Salonika from Edirne. He comes to Salonika in around 1530. He came there, and as much as we know, and this goes in line, by the way, with what Rabbi David Shalush writes about his period in Tzfat. He was not the rabbi or the Rosh Yeshiva of any specific kahal. Now, it is not to say that he was not of the stature that allowed him to do that, if he wished to do that. More probably, because he was so focused on writing the Bet Yosef, he didn't have time or didn't want to take upon himself this kind of position that as a rabbi of a synagogue or a dayan, he will be engaged always with those issues, and maybe that's really what enabled him. It's interesting to think when we look back, all the great scholars that lived in his time, like Maharit Taitatzek and Ben Haviv and the Mabit, Rabbi Yosef, they were all great scholars. Some of them of his level, some of them maybe more, but all of them held positions as judges and rabbis and all that, and no one produced what he did. So he made the choice, probably a deliberate choice, of this is what he wants to focus on. So what we have from that period in Salonika, we have reference to Hamidrash Shel Hacham Hashalem Arav Rabbi Yosef Karo. We had a midrash. Midrash meant that in the courtyard, they described here in the Jewish quarter. Usually, what you had is a courtyard, like in a closed neighborhood, a central yard, and around it many houses that all open into the yard, where you have shops and and residential area altogether. You still can see it in Yerushalayim. Some of the old neighborhoods, Batei Ran, Batei Ungarin. It's they call it, but they. It's funny, those neighborhoods in Yerushalayim, not far from Mahne Yehuda, they're all called after cities in Europe. Batei Ran, Batei Ungarin, Batei Munkach, that's yours. But they were built in the style of the Middle East. This is how they used to live. It was called in Turkish Caravansaray. Caravansaray. Yeah, and it's good you have to give us the pronunciation. And they call it Caravansaray.
What's Saray in Turkish?
I'm sorry?
What's Saray?
Saray is
Galatasaray. Galatasaray.
Galata is the city in the
neighborhood of
your favorite soccer
soccer game.
So that's we had them and in all those courtyards that were midrashim, meaning this is the rabbi sits there and studies, and once in a while people come and have tefillah there. This is what do you have there? And one of the leaders of the community there, I mentioned Rabbi Yosef Tatzek, was a Rosh Yeshiva that was very. Rabbi Yosef Tatzek was takif. He was how I would say what the word. Very authoritarian in the way he led the yeshiva. He later on, Rabbi Yosef Karo had great respect towards him, not always agreed with him. And remember the story that that we reviewed by the Hida from Shem HaGdolim. Rabbi Haim David Azulai, in his biography, the history that he collects about the rabbis, he tells this story about the three great rabbis, all them Yosef, that were slated to write something like the shulchan-aruch, like the Bet Yosef. Rabbi Yosef Karo, Rabbi Yosef Tatzek, and Mahari ben Haviv, Rabbi Yosef ben Haviv. And Rabbi Yosef Karo was chosen because of his extreme humility. But so Rabbi David Shalush, when he brings this story, he says we don't know, and he shows that the story doesn't hold water. So there's no basis for it, but there is a basis in the sense that Rabbi Yosef Taitzik was very authoritarian and very self-aware. So when he writes about his yeshiva in Salonika, he writes this: "זה יותר מ-30 שנה, אשר הייתה ישיבתי אחת מהישיבות החשובות, אשר בכל גלילות טורקיה." Says, for over 30 years, my yeshiva was the most important, one of the more important yeshivot in all of Turkey. And יותר מ-ט"ו שנה, שלא הייתה בכל הגלילות הנזכרים כמוה בחוכמה ובמניין. So, already for 30 years, this yeshiva is established. It says, in the last 15 years, there's no yeshiva which equals it in terms of the knowledge of the students and the number of the students. ויש לי יותר מ-20 תלמידים מובהקים שכל תורתם קיבלו ממני והם רואים לבעלי ישיבות כולם בעלי הוראה. So they have more than 20 disciples that studied all under me, and they're all ready to be the heads of yeshivot and the so he was very well aware of his abilities, and it's not a it's not a good thing that when you have two strong personalities later on, then they would clash over that. But it's between Edirne and Salonika. That was the place where Rabbi Yosef Karo started to delve into the study of Kabbalah, because that is the time where the Zohar was published, and there were other things that happened there that caused an awareness and an awakening towards the study of Kabbalah. We'll talk about it, B'ezrat Hashem, next time.